When's the last time you watched a movie from your car? Think about it. Windows down, maybe a little breeze, the smell of popcorn in the air. It's something special. Right now, here's the big question. Did you know Florida used to be home to tons of drive-in theaters? I mean, all across the state. And yeah, we still have a few hanging on, but back in the day, this was the way to catch a movie. Like the social event of the week, families packing up the car, couples on their first dates. Today, we're diving deep into the history of drive-ins in Florida, from the very first one in Miami to the modern day spots, still keeping the tradition alive. And we'll talk about why they were so big here, besides the fact that, it's Florida and we basically live in our cars. But seriously, what is it about drive-ins that just sticks with people? Maybe it's that blend of nostalgia and the simplicity of it all. Or maybe it's because there's something so Florida about watching a movie under the stars with a warm breeze blowing through. So buckle up. We're going on a ride through history today. Let's talk about the rise, the fall, and the comeback of Florida's drive-in theaters. You're not going to want to miss this one.
Welcome to Old Florida Now, where we uncover the rich history and hidden stories of the Sunshine State. Each episode will explore the people, places, and events that shaped Florida's past. Let's dive in.
All right, so picture this. It's the early 1930s, right? America's got this growing obsession with cars. I mean, we just loved our automobiles. And what do you do when everyone's suddenly got wheels? You bring the movies to the cars. That's exactly what happened. Now, the very first drive-in theater, it opened up in Camden, New Jersey in 1933. It was basically the brainchild of this guy named Richard Hollingshead. Funny story, he came up with the whole thing because his mom found indoor theater seats, let's say a little snug for her liking. So he ties some sheets to trees in his yard, sticks a projector on the hood of his car, and boom, a whole new way to watch movies is born. And what's wild is people loved it. Right from the start, folks were paying 25 cents a car and another 25 cents per person to park their rides and watch movies under the stars. And let's be real, this idea didn't just take off because of the movies. It's the 1930s, and people were looking for cheap entertainment. Combine that with, our love of driving around, and suddenly you've got the perfect combo. Car culture meets Hollywood. By the 1940s and 50s, after World War II, drive-ins really started to boom. Everyone had cars, the suburbs were growing, and people wanted a place to take the family that wasn't going to break the bank. Drive-ins, total win. They're affordable, they're casual, and you don't even have to worry about getting a babysitter. You just pack up the kids in their PJs, and they're usually asleep before the movie even starts. And the concept just meshed so well with that post-war American vibe. Cars were freedom, right? And watching movies from your car where you could talk, smoke, snack, whatever, felt way more relaxed than cramming into a regular movie theater. Plus, I mean, some of these drive-ins had like playgrounds and petting zoos to keep the kiddos busy before the show started. It was an event, not just a movie. So yeah, by the 50s, the whole drive-in phenomenon was huge, like over 4,000 theaters all across the country. And the best part, Florida, with its warm nights, was prime drive-in territory. We'll dive into some of those iconic Florida spots a little later. So let's talk about Florida and drive-ins, because honestly, this state was prime real estate forum from the very beginning. In fact, Florida's first drive-in opened way back in 1938 down in Miami. We got in on the drive-in in action early, just a few years after the first one popped up in New Jersey. And you got to think about why Florida was so perfect for this, right? It's hot. I mean, it's always hot. You can practically run these theaters year round, which is a huge bonus when you don't have to worry about snow or freezing cold weather. It was like a dream setup for drive-ins. Plus, this was the time when car culture was booming everywhere, and Florida was no exception. Everyone was buying cars, driving everywhere, and drive-ins just made sense. You could catch a movie without even leaving your car, like the ultimate combo of convenience and novelty. Add in the state's long, flat spaces, and suddenly you've got the perfect formula for massive outdoor theaters. By the 1950s, Florida had over 150 drive-ins from the big cities like Miami and Orlando to small towns all over the state. People would pack up the family, head to these places with playgrounds for the kids, snack bars with burgers and popcorn. It wasn't just about the movies. It was the night out. And the best part, the climate meant you could pretty much go anytime. There wasn't a season for drive-ins here like in other parts of the country where winter shut them down. Florida's weather and our love for a good drive really set the stage for this whole thing to explode here. All right, so let's head back to February 1938. Picture it. Miami's got its very first drive-in theater opening up, and honestly, it's one of the earliest in the entire country. This place was set up on Northwest 7th Avenue and 79th Street, and man, it was huge for the time. We're talking about space for around 600 cars. Some sources even say up to 1,000 on a busy night, depending on who you ask. Either way, it was a massive operation back in the day. Now get this, the opening night featured a film called Fury and the Woman, classic, right? They charged about 35 cents per person at first, but they had to cut it down to 25 cents because people weren't having it. You know, people back then were thrifty, and even a few cents made a big difference. But hey, kids under 12, they got in for free. So parents were all about this. It was cheap entertainment, and you didn't have to worry about babysitters or getting dressed up. Just pack the kids in their pajamas, roll up, and boom, family night out under the stars. And let me paint the picture here. It wasn't just about the movie. The whole setup was designed for comfort. They had these ramps so your car wouldn't get blocked by the one in front of you, and each spot had its own speaker. Yeah, no fancy surround sound here, just a little box hanging on your car window, but people loved it. It was simple, easy, and hey, you didn't have to leave the comfort of your car. Opening night drew in a huge crowd, and soon enough, the place became a hit. Families, couples, you name it. It was the perfect way to kick back in the Miami heat, especially before air conditioning was a thing in theaters. Drive-ins like this were made for Florida's warm, clear nights. It didn't take long for Miami to catch drive-in fever. This was just the start. So picture this, February 7th, 1940, Orlando opens up its very first drive-in theater over on South Orange Blossom Trail. And let me tell you, it was a big deal back then. I mean, we're talking about 300 car capacity, which was a huge draw at the time. And it was one of those places where people would just roll up, park, and enjoy the movie without ever having to leave their car. The screen was massive, 60 feet high and 42 feet wide. That's about 4 times bigger than what most people were used to seeing at indoor theaters. And get this, they had these individual speakers for each car. So no worrying about hearing the person munching on popcorn behind you because, well, they were in their own car. But the best part, it was super family friendly. They really catered to families with kids, showing cartoons and lighthearted flicks. And if you needed a little extra service, you didn't even have to get out of the car. They had car side service for snacks, drinks, and they'd even clean your windshield for you. How wild is that? You're sitting there catching a movie and someone's wiping down your windshield so you have the perfect view. Can you imagine opening night? They showed a Mickey Mouse cartoon, some sports reels, and the main feature was Vivacious Lady, this romantic comedy with Ginger Rogers and Jimmy Stewart. Nearly 3,000 people showed up. It was like the place to be in Orlando. Pretty awesome, huh? All right, so after World War II, drive-in theaters just exploded in popularity across the country, and Florida was no exception. I mean, people were coming back from the war. There was this whole economic boom, and suddenly everyone's got cars. And what better way to combine that new love for driving with some entertainment, right? By the late 1940s, drive-ins were the place to be, especially for families. You didn't have to worry about finding a babysitter because you just pack the kids up in the car, probably in their pajamas, and head to the drive-in for a night out. No one had to dress up, and you could enjoy the movie from the comfort of your own car. Florida, with its warm climate and car-loving culture, was perfect for this kind of thing. By 1958, drive-ins were at their peak across the U.S., and Florida had dozens of thriving spots. And it wasn't just about the movie, you know. These places had everything: playgrounds, bottle warmers for the babies, car side service. Some even had fireworks shows to make it a full night of fun. The drive-ins were really built for families, but let's be honest, they also became a bit of a teen hangout spot too. You'd have families parked up front, teens on dates in the middle, and those passion pits in the back rows where things got a little less about the movie. Florida embraced all of it. You'd find drive-ins in pretty much every big town, and it wasn't just for locals. Tourists who were driving through Florida on vacation loved pulling over to catch a movie under the stars. It was cheap, it was fun, and it was so Florida, combining the best of our state's car culture with warm, balmy nights. By the end of the 50s, Florida drive-ins were at their peak, but that's also when things started to shift. Rising land prices and the rise of indoor theaters eventually caused a decline. But man, those golden years, drive-ins were the go-to spot. So by the time the baby boom hit, drive-ins became this perfect, affordable family outing, right? You'd load up the car with the kids and just head out for a night under the stars. I mean, talk about convenience. You didn't have to worry about babysitters or getting dressed up. You could just relax in your car while the little ones dozed off in the back seat. And here's the thing. Drive-ins really knew how to cater to families. They weren't just showing movies. Oh no, they went all out. Some had playgrounds where the kids could burn off energy before the movie started. And get this, there were even diaper vending machines on site. Like, how cool is that? You didn't have to stress about baby supplies because they had everything covered for you. Some places even went as far as offering mini golf courses. Yep, before the movie rolled, you could take a few swings and make it a full-blown family event. I think what made it so special, especially for parents, was that you could take your time, have a snack, maybe chat a little during the movie without worrying about disturbing anyone around you. It was this super chill, all-in-one experience, part movie, part night out, and all about keeping everyone happy, from the kids to the parents. It just worked, you know? So Florida's drive-ins weren't just about the movies, you know? Back in the day, they were kind of like mini festivals. Drive-in owners really knew how to pull in a crowd with all sorts of gimmicks and attractions. I'm talking about contests, giveaways, and even special appearances by celebrities. It wasn't just about sitting in your car and watching a flick. It was a whole event. For example, some theaters would do these crazy prize drawings. Sometimes you'd win a free movie pass, and other times maybe even bigger prizes like a washing machine or a new set of tires. And they weren't shy about going all out with promotions. A few places had live bands playing before the movie started, or local celebrities coming by for meet and greets. One of the most famous examples has got to be the Swap Shop Drive-In down in Fort Lauderdale. Not only is it the largest drive-in in the U.S. with 14 screens, but it's also part flea market. You could spend your afternoon shopping and then kick back and catch a movie in the evening. It's like a 2-in-1 experience. This place has always been a real draw with all its special events and unique vibe. And let's not forget about some of the more quirky attractions. I've heard stories of drive-ins that even had things like petting zoos or circus performers to keep people entertained before the film. They really turned movie night into something bigger, a way for the whole community to come together. All right, let's talk about one of the true legends of Florida drive-ins, Silver Moon Drive-In, right there in Lakeland. This place has been around since 1948 and is still going strong today, which is wild when you think about how many drive-ins have faded away over the years. Silver Moon, it's still lighting up the screen every single night. Now, what's cool about Silver Moon is that they show double features every night of the week. So you're not just getting one movie, you get to settle in and enjoy two back-to-back for a pretty affordable ticket price. Families love it because, you know, it's way cheaper than going to the big indoor theaters. And if you head there on the weekends, you can check out their swap shop. Saturday and Sunday mornings, the whole drive-in lot transforms into this big flea market where you can find anything from vintage vinyl records to fresh produce. It's like two different worlds, depending on when you visit. Movies at night, bargain hunting in the morning. What's wild is that this place has evolved so much over the years. Originally, it just had the one screen, but in 1985, they added a second one to keep up with demand. Now it can fit around 500 cars, and they've got modern digital projectors for that crystal clear picture. So you get all the retro vibes with the perks of modern tech. It's one of only a handful of drive-ins left in Florida. And honestly, it's kind of a living tribute to the golden era of drive-ins. If you're ever near Lakeland, it's definitely worth checking out. All right, so let's talk about the Ruskin Family Drive-In. This place has been a part of the Florida drive-in scene since 1952, and it's still going strong. I mean, how many places can say they've been showing movies for over 70 years and still have that old school charm? What's special about Ruskin is that it's one of those spots that really feels like stepping back in time. You roll up, and they still have the original external speakers you can hang on your window if you're feeling nostalgic. Or if you're more modern, you can just tune your car radio to catch the sound, but the speakers are still there. And that's what gives it this cool vintage vibe. Now, it's not just about the movies here. This drive-in is a real community staple. People come from all over just to enjoy that cozy, family-friendly atmosphere. No R-rated movies, no alcohol allowed. It's all about keeping it safe and fun for everyone, whether you're there with your kids or on a date. And get this, they only charge $7 for adults and $2 for kids. That's just like super affordable compared to your typical movie theater. You're getting 2 movies for that price too. It's the kind of place where families have been coming for generations. Grandparents who came here as kids are now bringing their grandkids. It's just one of those rare, places that still holds on to those old values of community and simple fun. So yeah, Ruskin's got that magic. It's not just about watching a movie. It's about being part of something that's lasted for decades. If you're ever in the area, it's definitely worth a visit. All right, let's talk about one of the most unique drive-ins out there, the Fort Lauderdale Swap Shop. Now, this place is like way more than just a drive-in. Sure, it's got 14 screens, which makes it one of the biggest drive-ins in the world. But during the day, it's a massive flea market with over 2,000 vendors. So you could spend your morning hunting for bargains, maybe even grab a bite from one of the food stands, and then boom, stick around for a movie under the stars. What's wild is that it started way back in 1963 as the Thunderbird Drive-In with just one screen. But over time, it expanded into this full-blown entertainment complex. The founder, Preston Henn, had a real entrepreneurial spirit. He wasn't just content with movies. He threw in carnival rides, a circus, and even a Ferrari museum at one point. The circus ran for years, 6 days a week, drawing tons of people, which made this place feel like more of a permanent fairground than a regular theater. Today, the Swap Shop still draws huge crowds. It's open 365 days a year, rain or shine. And whether you're in the mood to shop or just catch a double feature, it's the kind of place that combines nostalgia with something for everyone. It's no surprise it's one of the most visited tourist attractions in South Florida. So let's talk about what really started to push drive-ins into decline in the 70s and 80s. And yeah, it all comes down to home entertainment. I mean, the moment color TVs became affordable, people just started staying home. Why go out when you could sit on your own couch and watch something in color, right? By the mid-70s, it wasn't just about TV anymore. That's when the VCR hit the scene, and man, did that change things. Now you could rent a movie, pop it in whenever you wanted, and boom, movie night at home. And let's not forget the whole video rental thing. Places like Blockbuster, you remember those, right? Made it super easy to rent a movie and watch it as many times as you wanted. People could build their own little movie libraries at home. I mean, why would you drive out to a theater and pay for just one movie when you could rent a whole bunch and watch from your living room? By the time you get into the 80s, drive-ins were really feeling it. On top of home entertainment, you had the rise of the multiplex theaters where you could pick from 5 or 6 movies at different times. And then there's the fact that indoor theaters had air conditioning, better sound systems, and no mosquitoes to deal with. Drive-ins just couldn't compete with the comfort and variety that indoor theaters offered. It wasn't just about convenience either. Real estate prices were climbing. A lot of drive-ins were on prime land that was becoming way too valuable to keep using for movies. So a lot of them sold off the land to developers. By the late 80s, only a couple hundred drive-ins were still open. But hey, that doesn't mean they're gone for good. Drive-ins still have that nostalgic charm, and some are still kicking today. But back in the 70s and 80s, yeah, it was pretty rough for them. So, one of the big reasons drive-ins started to disappear, especially here in Florida, was just plain old real estate. As the population grew, especially in the 70s and 80s, land in suburban areas became really valuable. I mean, when you think about it, a drive-in needs a lot of space, right? We're talking huge parking lots for hundreds of cars, and for most of the day, that land just wasn't making any money. Developers started to realize they could make a whole lot more building shopping malls, apartments, or even office complexes on that land. Suddenly, it made way more sense for drive-in owners to sell their property to developers than to keep running a theater that only operated at night and had to close if it rained. Plus, with real estate prices rising, the property taxes alone made it tough for a lot of these family-run drive-ins to stay afloat. And as much as people love drive-ins, you couldn't really compete with the convenience of indoor multiplex theaters or the growing home entertainment industry. So, by the 80s, a lot of drive-ins were either selling off their land or shutting down altogether. And that's why today it's rare to find one still in operation. They just couldn't keep up with the rising land values and changing economy. So one of the big challenges drive-ins faced, especially as indoor theaters started getting all fancy, was that they could only really operate at twilight, right? I mean, you couldn't exactly have a movie playing during the day with the sun glaring on the screen. The whole setup just wasn't built for that. Now, there were some attempts to get around it. A few places tried these big tent-like structures to block out the sunlight and offer daytime shows, but those ideas kind of flopped. They just couldn't replicate that perfect nighttime movie experience. The charm of drive-ins was being outdoors under the stars, and any attempt to push that into daytime viewing just didn't stick. Compared to indoor theaters, drive-ins were at a big disadvantage when it came to revenue. Indoor theaters could run shows all day long, multiple screenings back to back, and make a lot more money. But drive-ins, they had that limited window between dusk and midnight, so they were stuck with just a couple of showings each night. Plus, the technology at the time didn't really help drive-ins either. As home entertainment evolved and indoor theaters upgraded their sound and picture quality, drive-ins struggled to keep up, especially when they were already losing money from being closed during the day. All of that just added to the pressure they were facing. All right, so let's talk about how the pandemic kind of brought back drive-in theaters. It's funny, right? Something that seemed so old school suddenly became the perfect solution for socially distanced entertainment. People were stuck at home, theaters were closed, and everyone was just craving some kind of normalcy. Enter the drive-ins, outdoor, socially distant, and still all about community. In Florida, we saw a lot of pop-up drive-ins start to show up in parks, parking lots, and even empty fields. People were setting up inflatable screens, using parking lots at venues that couldn't host indoor events, and making the whole experience feel fresh again. It wasn't just about catching a movie either. A lot of these places added food trucks, pre-show entertainment, and even live performances, kind of turning the drive-in experience into a full-blown event. Places like the Ocala Drive-In, which had been around since the late 1940s, suddenly became the go-to spot for locals, and they were packing the lot every night. Even traditional theaters, like Epic Theaters, set up temporary drive-ins by projecting movies onto the sides of their buildings just to keep the business going during those lockdowns. It was wild. And it wasn't just about nostalgia. For a lot of folks, it was a safe way to get out, get some fresh air, and still feel like you were a part of something, even if you were in your own car, parked 6 feet away from everyone else. Drive-ins felt tailor-made for that weird time in our lives when we were all just trying to figure out how to stay connected without being too close, All right, so when we look back at Florida's drive-ins, it's pretty amazing to see the role they've played over the years. I mean, from the post-war heyday when families packed into their cars to the challenges of the 70s and 80s with the rise of home entertainment, all the way to the pandemic, bringing them back in a big way. Drive-ins have been part of our entertainment history for decades. In a way, they're more than just places to watch a movie, right? They've always been about community. Whether it's that feeling of nostalgia or just the fun of sitting outside under the stars, Florida's drive-ins remind us of a simpler time. And now with places like Silver Moon, Ruskin Family, and Ocala still going strong, they're proving that even in this fast-paced world, there's still room for a bit of tradition. But, it's also about preservation. These aren't just relics. They're living pieces of our cultural landscape. They show us that entertainment isn't always about the biggest screen or the fanciest theater. Sometimes it's about that shared experience where the story on the screen becomes part of our own memories. So if you ever find yourself near one of these drive-ins, give it a visit. It's not just a movie. It's a piece of Florida's past, still evolving, still giving us that magic we all need every now and then. Thanks for hanging out with me today on Old Florida Now. I'm Bo Carter, and I'll catch you next time. Until then, keep those windows down and your radios tuned in.
Thanks for listening to Old Florida Now. Stay tuned for more stories from the Sunshine State's past. Until next time.